I'd like to invite others, if you're doing a lot of work in the Mid-Atlantic region, to also come up and join us up here, or this is going to be very informal. Yeah, welcome everybody to participate.
Yeah, you got. I like being able to escape.
So thanks everyone for joining this session on some of the priorities for the Mid-Atlantic states around environmental, climate, and energy justice, and in particular, centering communities in the work to address environmental, climate, and energy justice. My name is Jay Monteverde. I work with the Mid-Atlantic Justice Coalition and at the organization NAMATI, grassroots justice organization that's convening the Mid-Atlantic Justice Coalition. And yeah, this was meant to be a very sort of informal talk about and discussion and roundtable sort of open session about what some of the EJ priorities, the climate justice, energy justice priorities are in the region. Originally it was going to be a roundtable or several roundtables, one per state. But looking at how many people are here, we figure we might as well just sort of have it a little bit looser and really invite everybody to just participate. And the idea is to talk about, to talk about and share how the priorities in each state are being seen in the other states as well. And so a more open discussion seems very conducive to that. So on the panel right now, or up on the stage, I have two colleagues, Kerri Harris, also with the Mid-Atlantic Justice Coalition, and Maria Payan with SRAP and Socially Responsible Agricultural Project, working in Eastern Maryland and Southern Delaware. And maybe I'll start with an opening question that I'll just ask Kerri and Maria to talk a little bit about, and then also invite others, if you'd like to add some of your own work on this or what you've seen, to please just raise your hand, and I'm happy to share the platform.
Layla forgot that she was supposed to be up here also.
Couldn't get away. And this is Layla Borrero-Kraus, working at CATA on the Eastern Shore of Maryland with agricultural communities there. So as a sort of starter question, I'd like to ask folks to introduce and talk a little bit about the top issues in your state related to environmental health and safety, environmental justice, communities, economic justice, climate resiliency, or energy justice. And actually, I just realized before we start the discussion, I don't know, I see Quenn Shabazz is joining us remotely. I don't know if Quenn, you can hear us, and if we can hear you. If you're talking right now, Quenn, you're muted in the previous panel. Oh. Is our audio unmuted? I can't see that icon. Oh, we're still muted.
What kind of comms guy are you? Go in my purse.
Hi there, Quenn, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hi there, Quenn. Sorry, I just realized that this Zoom mic was off. This is Jay. I was just introducing the informal discussion we're having here around priorities in the Mid-Atlantic states around environmental, climate, and energy justice. And we're doing this as a sort of informal discussion among folks. And I was just introducing folks. So Quenn Shabazz is the coordinator for the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative, and also the director for United Parents Against Lead in Virginia. And I was asking sort of opening question, if folks could please introduce the top issues in your state related to environmental health and safety, communities, economic justice, climate resiliency, or energy justice. And maybe for starters, I'll ask Kerri if you can.
Am I going to region?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you should.
Okay, can I ask Maria to get us started?
Okay, so
I'll talk a little bit about Delaware and focus a little bit about there because I live there now. So although you'll see a lot of the issues are very, very similar, and I will say not only even across the region, but across the country when we talk about environmental justice. So I live in southern Delaware, which is the number one Sussex County is the very bottom part of the state, the most southern part. That is the number one county in the entire country for the production of broilers, which is poultry, chicken. So we have within Sussex County, I believe it's 6 processing plants. It is a lot of industrial animal production. They bring in a lot of jobs when you talk about some of the trucks and the hauling, the processing plant workers, but we also have a problem that oftentimes where especially a lot of the processing plants are cited and bigger operations, if we're talking about energy. Right now, they're trying to cite a lot of the biogas facilities, which is the anaerobic digestion. We call it basically factory farm gas operations in areas that have very little power, are usually high minority, low income, often have English as a second language. It is difficult for the communities to get the information because of the language barriers, and even because of the way that the whole structure is set up when you talk about government processes, like going to a town meeting. It's much different when you're talking about populations where English is a second language. There's a little bit of a different trust factor. But the point being that within these operations, they do bring jobs, but they also bring a lot of pollution. And what happens is the communities that usually have the least power usually are cited with the most pollution. Whether that be purposeful or not purposeful, it's the way it happens. So for example, we have an area within a 2-mile radius. This was part of a PowerPoint I did today. Within a 2-mile radius, the poverty level, I believe, was 3 times the poverty level of the entire state. Okay, minority was between 33 and 50% of the population. And within a 2-mile radius, we had a processing plant. We had 2 Superfund sites. We had 1 brownfield site. We had a power plant. We had a concrete concrete asphalt plant. And this was also within an area that the closest neighbors were 2 mobile home parks, which had a huge population with English as a second language. And we had 2 schools that were very close on the street. There are economic challenges, and I think all of this overlaps each other, right? Where we see a lot of industrial operations, a lot of what they call economic investment. It's usually economic investment that brings pollution with it, right? We want economic investment that is jobs that are going to pay well, but also be healthy for the community. So these barriers, I think through planning and zoning and different forms of government, they think like it makes sense to put something there because this is where it is. But oftentimes, they become sacrifice zones. And there's often promises made which don't end up being delivered. So I think that we really need to encourage development, but we want development that's going to also not only, we don't only want to stop pollution from coming into communities, we want to grow communities. That's important. We want input on developing communities, but we want communities that are going to attract other businesses, not be used as, okay, they need economic development, let's put the next waste industry there. So I would say the broiler production, industrial ag production, energy has definitely taken over the southern part of the state. You go up into the northern part of the state in Delaware, and you have a lot of the refineries. I know Croda has been talked about in the news for way too long. We have a lot of problems with Route 9, the traffic. So air pollution, water pollution, it's a severe problem in Delaware. And the one thing I will add is that 97.5% of Delaware's waterways, rivers and streams, are contaminated. 97.5%, number one in the country. So this is not working. And it's not okay that babies are born with birth defects. It's not okay that mothers, pregnant women cannot carry babies to healthy babies, to birth. And these are things that we can take care of. So I think it's very important that we realize investing in communities is investing in the entire system, right? You feed communities healthy food, you're going to have less of the healthcare problems. So it's not about saying no to things. It's about creating the communities that everybody wants to have, which are just communities for their families, where their families can thrive and educate and be taught. And that's the American dream, right? That's what we're supposed to have. So,
Thank you, Maria. Queen, if you're available right now, I'd like to turn it over to you and ask, what are some of the priorities on environmental, climate, energy, and economic justice that you're seeing in your work? And I think Maria did a great job of adding a second part to the question, which I'd like to ask others to also answer, is what work are you doing with communities in particular, at the community level, at the grassroots level, to address these issues in Virginia?
Yes, thank you, Jay. Well, in Virginia, we're dealing with a multitude of environmental justice issues that are impacting historical communities, from pipelines. We're still dealing with pipelines going through several of our states, which is why it's important that we have this regional network. We are dealing with, I heard just mentioned, an asphalt plant that is really a fence line community. We are dealing with lots of landfills, mega landfills, a Wegmans distribution center that will impact one historic community. So just a multitude of issues that we've been working on with our partners here in the state to combat environmental injustices and make sure that we all have the opportunity to live in healthy, thriving communities, and making sure that there's equity built in, the resources that are coming to our communities. One thing that we are working on to combat it is a solar power community resiliency hub in the city of Petersburg that will be a haven for the community to have a safe space during a climate crisis or power outage, whether it's nature-made or man-made. And so through those type of activities, clean energy, and that's led by the community, through community controlled funds. We think that we make an impact by not having to wait for someone to come in and save us. We're taking the ownership of saving and protecting ourselves.
Thank you, Queen. Layla, if I can turn it over to you. and ask you the same question. What are some of the top priorities in your work, and how are you working with communities on them?
Well, my organization is based in Salisbury, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. And we work closely with farm workers and a lot of poultry workers. We don't have an office in Delaware, we're right next door, so we work with a lot of poultry workers as they, many of them cross the county or state lines, looking for employment. Maria said about the language barrier, that's where I come in. Everything that everybody else have to say around here, I have to bring that out to them, to their level, to their houses, to level understanding and comprehension, because farmers and poultry workers are poultry growers are not going to let them know. They don't give them the equipment to work. So nevertheless, they're not going to give them the word information. So I go around to farm workers in migrant camps in Delaware, Maryland, poultry workers areas. We have done a lot of things with Oxfam, and we work with Maria SRAP and doing even the
Biogas. CAFO, biogas.
yeah, all that CAFOs and all that stuff information, because many of those workers, they work closely with the chickens. Some of them have in the hatcheries, some of them work with the chicken coops. They have to clean them up, take the dead birds, and they don't have the equipment. The chickens be flopping and all that particles in the air they inhale. And also they live right next to where all the poultry waste is storage. They live in small trailers close to all these chicken coops. They smell that, they live with it. A lot of the children have asthma issues. The thing is that many of them will not complain, because one of the things is legal status. They're afraid. They're here to work and do a job that can support their family here and families abroad. They would not rock the boat. As long as they have some income and they can live, they don't understand down the road the illness. They don't understand if the child has cancer or something else until it is too late. We work with all these workers, making sure they can ask for this equipment to work. It's their right. We try to educate them and say, you have a legal right in this country. You have, just because you have no legal status, it doesn't mean you're not going to have a job. But they think that who will hire them again? They can get blacklisted. Also, if they complain, they lose housing, not only employment, housing. And that is very hard for families who are here. Some of them are working through staff agencies. And when they work with staff agencies, they don't have no other rights of employment, because the employer, it is the staff agency, not the chicken grower or the chicken plant processing. So it is a big issue for the Latino community, but in the Eastern Shore, we're growing a lot of Haitians as well. And we have a lot of Haitians that are coming from South America. They're coming across the border. We have a lot of Central Americans, and they just want to work to make that money. They have to pay to come across or to send back home to family left behind. It is very hard for the workers to come forward and speak about their issues until, again, it is kind of late for their family. In the poultry industry, how many families got devastated because of COVID? They were called essential workers, but they were not treated well during COVID. I was at Purdue plant at 5:30 in the morning with the health department and CDC people doing the COVID test, and I was very involved throughout this entire pandemic, working in the communities, make sure they be tested and vaccinated. They make sure they have all this. And some poultry workers, I was told that they take the temperature, but if they have a temperature, what they do, they give them an ice cream. So when you go back, the temperature will change. We have a lot of poultry workers that die, and we don't know. A lot of the coworkers learn through Facebook, and that is crazy. They don't get that information in the plant. There's so many things in the poultry industry. Even the bathroom breaks is really crazy. They don't even have the bathroom breaks. Even in the farm worker communities, in the fields, they don't have the potable water and the bathrooms to use in the fields. And they're supposed to have portables following them in the fields with water, cold water, has to be cold, and portable bathrooms. Because if not, what's going to happen? There's a lot of issues, E. coli, we hear a lot of that on the news, but I'm going around, driving around, taking pictures of fields where I find maybe one bathroom, portable bathroom, and there might be 30 workers or more, and it'd be males and females, and one bathroom, and then it would be not that close. They're supposed to be one bathroom for every 20 workers. Now, one bathroom for every 20 workers, think. And it has to be within 1/4 of a mile of their work site. And sometimes it's not. Not too long ago, I went to Caroline County where someone who is with the Department of Agriculture and works with the Department of Agriculture and have workers working in agriculture, and a lot of young ones, and they were complaining they have no bathrooms. And I went and counted, it was 20 workers, and finally they got a bathroom. They were talking about walking out of, as the last resource, but even though that was not going to happen, I didn't think it was going to happen. Since 1986, I've been working with immigrants in this area, and I never seen workers just walk out because they're so afraid to lose their jobs or because they need that money. It's very important to them to survive. The families here and abroad.
Thank you, Leila. Kerri.
GA.
Yes, Queen, please. Queen, go ahead.
Oh, yes, I just would like to add something to what was said, please. Years ago, I did an article on labor and the conditions of those chicken factories and farms, and how they actually slowly speed up the line so that they can actually produce more, with unbeknownst to the workers. They have a mechanism that's controlled from somewhere else to speed up the line. And then there was an instant where one of the workers was working with some of the machinery, and there was no, like lockout, tag out to turn the machine off. And he actually was pulled into the machine and lost his life. So those types of things that happen in those, where people are just working to try to make a living.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, last week I went to visit. I had a reporter from Washington Post following me around, and we went to interview this different poultry workers, and she said just last week somebody was going to hang chickens and their hands got caught and it was blood all over. They have to stop the machine and clean those machines and right back to work. Everybody.
Can you talk?
And how much of that got into the chicken that's on the market,
Explain what,
you know?
how that's all set up.
Yeah, Maria wants me to speak about, we have in Somerset County, World War II camp where they held the Germans in World War II. Now I went to visit last week, excuse me, 600 to 700 workers, mainly Haitians, people from Central America, a lot of H-2A workers. There are contracts that they come from Mexico to work in agriculture, and the conditions are horrendous. They're a lot better than they used to be in the 90s. I'm gonna tell you that truth. But you imagine how the rains we've been getting, and they have to get out of their living quarters across from here to where this gentleman is, or maybe more, to bathrooms or kitchens in the opposite direction in the middle of the night. You imagine? So it used to be a POW camp. Now they hold the immigrants. They come to do our fruits and vegetables. There are watermelon workers there, and there are tomatoes. And I think it's Del Monte who have the contracts with some of them, and they pick in Virginia, so they come across state line and to county lines. And we have poultry workers that go into Virginia poultry plants, and the same from Maryland into Delaware. So during COVID, a lot of them were being transported by 15 passenger vans or minivans of 7 to 8 people. And you imagine that close contact during COVID, and they were still being forced to go to work because they were essential workers. They got no breaks. The migrant camp, I'm talking about, is right on Route 13 South, and it's in Westover, Maryland, and it's called Camp Road. It's on the northbound road of Route 13. A lot of the workers are coming from Florida. We have a lot of new arrivals from the border, and if they don't have employment authorization, they get a crew leader, bust them up from Florida or Georgia to come over here, and they do the hard work, and sometimes no, the whole pay. It's very hard working. And this heat stress that we're going through also. It's another big issue in our farm workers community and the poultry workers that work in the coops. The chicken catchers, nobody knows about chicken catchers.
Yeah. And there's no air conditioning out there.
No, no air condition. At one time, somebody said, "What are chicken catchers?" And I said, "For real? You think those chickens just walk up to the trailers, to those crates, and walk up to be bussed down to the poultry plant? I don't think so." So there's chicken catchers, and they work at night.
Yeah.
Mainly at night.
Thank you, Leila. And thank you also, Queen. I think that really highlights just how connected environmental justice for residents and for communities is, as well as worker justice, labor justice, the economic justice for workers. And the climate is only getting hotter, and there's no air conditioning out there. I'd like to pass it to Kerri to talk a little bit also about what you've seen in any of the Mid-Atlantic states and across the region. And I also would like to say again, if anybody would like to add something, there's microphones out now. Please feel free to raise your hand or just stand up at the microphone, and happy to have others participate as well. But Kerri?
I'm putting a timer on y'all because I can get long-winded, and it's almost 4 and I get tired, so I'm guessing you guys are tired. So what they shared shows our connection. And it happens to be across the mid-Atlantic that we work. But this is nationwide. We have the same industries, when I say the same industries, not the same type, but many of them are owned by the same people, contaminating all of our communities. When we're fighting concrete batching in Delaware, and we drive across the border and realize that Maryland and Virginia and DC are fighting those same companies, but it wasn't until we all joined together that we realized that connection. They're working to divide and conquer us. When we have landfills constantly growing, and we're talking about busing in trash from neighboring states into communities that they think can't fight back, that's a common struggle. When we have PFAS, these forever chemicals that are in a lot of products that we use, but we're now realizing how unsafe they are. And then we find out that our governing bodies knew about this for a long time. That's concerning. And we should be angry, and this is a common problem. None of us are gonna stop, well, some of us have. Good for you guys, I'm not ready yet. Stop eating chicken, okay? But what we do know is that we can have better neighbors in our poultry farmers, or I should especially say, not necessarily the contractors themselves, because they're getting taken advantage of too, but big industry that controls that industry. There are filters, and thankfully to this woman sitting next to me, she taught me years ago about these filters that can be put on the ventilation systems of our poultry houses that can cut emissions by 80% and the smells by 90%. Now, I don't know which one of you in this room have had to go past some of these poultry houses, but it's bad. It's bad. And to know that there is something that costs pennies on the dollar, to not just cut that smell, but cut the toxins, but they're not willing to do it because it might cost them overall a couple million in $1 billion industry. That's shameful. And this is a fight that we're all in. We're seeing permitting issues across our region where they push things through in a way that avoids us being able to say, not here, not there, not anywhere. Is this okay? Or they get around it by waiting to re-up the permits, right? Because as long as we know that they're in the process, right, of having their permits evaluated, it can take years for it to be done. And that's everywhere that this is happening. But they've set up this system of winners and losers. Divide and conquer. County against county, city against city, we're all vying for the same pot of money, and we're told that we're at historic levels of funding coming into our communities. And yet that funding is still in a system called grants, which any of us that work for nonprofits knows that's a horse and pony show. Who can write the prettier grant? Make their program sound like it's more effective. Make the funder feel good about themselves. And yet we're all just sitting here hoping to get by. Part of the reason we formed the Mid-Atlantic Justice Coalition is because we're done doing this by ourselves. We say enough is enough, but you can only get fed up on your own for so long and realize that nothing happens on your own. And so we're sitting here saying, how do we figure out how to create change that works for all of us? How do we make sure that the same company that's telling us a lie A here isn't changing that story in the state next door, and it's still causing the same problems, only to our brothers and sisters on the other side of the border, the invisible border? We understand that to create change, we have to function a little bit differently. And so the Mid-Atlantic Justice Coalition functions at the intersection of economic and environmental justice. What do we say no to, but what do we say yes to? Like I said, I'm not stopping eating chicken tomorrow. but I know there's a better way to raise that chicken. And I know we don't have to take advantage of our family farmers to do it. And I know that the neighbors to those farming communities don't have to be sick as a result of it. And I know that the waterways in Dover and throughout the state of Delaware don't have to increase to nearly 100% contamination in less than 10 years if we just do it right. And so what does that mean? It means that we have to work together with a common vision and mission. It means that for a certain number of things, we have to agree that we are moving forward together on these items. And that at the same time, some of us have additional priorities. And while we might not work on those as the collective group, whenever possible, we're there for each other as support. Sometimes we might have to fill a governing body's room. So while you might only be able to rally up 5 people from your community because of work schedules or the ability to pay for transportation, we might be able to bust people in and they don't know who we are. We just know we're brothers and sisters and we're fighting this together. And they think we're all from the same community, but the truth is we are. But we have to build strategically. We have to build power. We've all been working in this space, but power hasn't been built. We have to build power in a way that creates sustainable progress. A lot of us will look back to the civil rights movement as our light, our way of creating change. But what we learned just recently, if you just take the Voting Rights Act, we learned that if you don't create sustainable progress, it's easy to take it away. And so that's what we're here to do. We're here to create sustainable progress. We're here to make sure that all of us, when we share our stories, we're not thinking that we're sharing it into an abyss and nobody's hearing us. But not that we're just talking about it, but that we're taking action that will create that change. And that will encourage other people to be a part of it because they see that we're serious. They see that we can create change because they see that power being built. Not from the outside in, but from the inside out. And so we're excited about what we can do. We're excited about building together. We're excited about expanding. And so what I was hopeful for with what was supposed to be a roundtable is to hear what's going on with everyone. If this is something that you'd be interested in, what are you doing in your areas? Because the truth is that economic and environmental justice touches all other justice issues, whether it's healthcare, immigration rights, education equity, criminal justice, you name it, it lives here at this juncture. And we change everything by making sure these two pieces are on solid ground. And we also are clear when people keep saying all boats rise with the tide. I say this all the time. No matter where you go in this world, if you are considered Black, you are the lowest rung in our community. I am the lowest rung in our community. But you want to know the difference? You want to know when the rest of the United States and the world does better? When Black people do better, we are the tide. If anyone in here is from South Carolina, you will know that after Reconstruction, they actually had a Reconstruction, and they had a large amount of Black people elected to their state legislature. And everyone did better because of the legislation passed as a result of formerly enslaved people understanding what oppression is and what it will never, ever be again on their watch. But our system was broken. Federal troops were pulled out, and that was destroyed. Again, we didn't have sustainable progress. I challenge us all to come together, create that sustainable progress. Make sure that all boats rise with the tide. Black people being the tide. All other people of color, indigenous and brown folk, are the boats. White people are in the boats riding along, but if you're poor white, you're barely hanging on to the side. We can do it, and we can rise, and we can all do better. as long as we move with one collective consciousness.
Thank you, Kerri. I think that excellent call to action is the call that's before us. It's been echoed or said in various ways in different panels. It was articulated extremely passionately by Reverend Yearwood during lunch today. And yeah, again, open it up if anyone would like to share or talk about any of their work or any, how they are working in their communities. And in the meantime, I'd like to ask a follow-up question of working in communities. Different people, I think, understand it different ways. And I'd like to ask folks to talk a little bit plainly about, like, what does it look like for you? Like, how often are you doing what kinds of activities, and what does actually bringing people into the conversation look like? And let me ask, maybe I'll ask Layla to go first.
Well, Kata has a radio station from New Jersey, and we do a lot of talk show segments about different issues that we found in the communities. We have a newsletter sent out to a lot of the people that signed up with as members of Kata. And I go everywhere I'm asked to speak about them, for them, and I go to their houses to get them involved and have knowledge of what's going on outside the four walls.
And how do you sort of how do you frame the conversation, or how do you talk about the issues?
Wow. Comes in different ways because you have to earn their trust for them to continue talking to you. And you have to respect their boundaries. You have to respect, I don't want to hear no more, or I don't want to say no more. Just agree with them for the time being, maybe come back another time. After they see you in the community, one after another, in families or in the church or events. We are doing, I belong to this coalition now. It's called the Vulnerable Population. And we're going in every area in the tri-counties, the lower counties, doing food donations, doing masks, doing hand sanitizer, the home kit test for the COVID. We're giving out, we're getting help, helping them with their school registration for the children. So we come in many, it's like 50 or 60 organizations with this vulnerable population. And we go in north, west, east, south. We're going everywhere in the vulnerable populations, the brown and black community that we talk about so much, but because they're integrating now. We see in communities in Salisbury that in the poultry industry, and they're working along each other's side in the industry. So they have to ride together, some of them. There have to be neighbors. So they have to connect with them. And we have a lot of Haitians. We have interpreters for all of them. We have to have, we have to bring the information to them in their own language. That is very important to them. Not only in their own language, at their own level of education. Because sometimes you can say things and they go right over. So you have to talk at their level. You have to communicate with them, and all the family members, and respect the culture. It's very important.
And Leila, I hear you talking about connecting with people, like really connecting with people, right? So it's not like talking down to people. It's about like actually speaking to people where they're at. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, correct. Especially, with church activities is really good because a lot of them trust their pastors or ministers, priests. We go to every event that we can and bring information to them, talk to them, like you said, not talk down at them, and bring information that is of interest to their families. We talk about pesticides. We talk about HIV. We talk about sexually transmitting diseases. We talk about the COVID has been the most, but we talk about, they ask for family planning. They ask for all kind of things. And we have this connection with the vulnerable population that is people from all shapes and sizes of our community organizations. We got Habitat for Habitat people there helping with rent when they were not able to work. The schools, the health departments, we have the city of Salisbury was great. And you know what? I have to say it's great because the mayor of Salisbury, Day, his father is the big in Purdue, the big guy in Purdue. So we have to connect and be able to, aside politics, all of that, we have to connect and work with the city and get whatever they were giving us and bring out to the community as well and get the people involved. I have quite a few workers that came to talk to the different events that they did for CAFOs members. You don't see too many of the Latinos going forward and be seen in big groups like this where they fight in CAFOs. And we have groups that did talk and were able to bring out their information to be noticed. And sometimes it's hard because of the legal status that even if you offer them anonymous, they still be reluctant to talk or be seen in some of this platform.
Right.
Thank you, Leila. Did I see anyone else wanted to add
think
anything?
there's
I did see a
questions.
question. Please.
Hi, can you hear me? Oh,
Yes.
okay, not a question, but I just kind of wanted to chime in here. My name's Courtney. I'm actually an intern under Dr. Wilson for Teach this summer. I'm an oncoming junior here at the University of Maryland, environmental science and policy major, sustainability minor, and I'm pre-law. My family and I have a beach house about 30 minutes outside of Ocean City, so on the Eastern Shore, just like you guys have been mentioning. And I just kind of wanted to make it known that it's a lot of farmland out there. You see a lot of corn, a lot of potatoes, and what you've been talking about, Purdue. I see a lot of chicken farms, and I think what people kind of overlook is if you just go off the beaten path, you're seeing what you're talking about in real life. And pardon my use for lack of better words, but it's honestly shacks. People are working all day. And I think it's interesting I'm thankful for the work that you all are doing that's bringing it into real life perspective. And it's just definitely just shaping why I want to go into environmental law, because I know that there's a better way to do exactly what you all are thinking. And for the color of my skin, and for the color of your all's skin, it's important. And so I'm just thankful for the work that you're doing. Yeah, I just want to share that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, make sure y'all can hear me.
Please.
First of all, I am newer to the EJ movement, so I'm so grateful to be here today. My name is Tiffany Garner, and I work as a policy advocate. I actually work with an organization in Washington, D.C. called Futures Without Violence, but under my portfolio, I do a lot of federal policy and lobbying work around child welfare, but I also do some work around maternal health care, as well as funding for community health centers, which oftentimes helps agricultural workers, farm workers, migrant workers. So as I'm just kind of diving more into this arena, I wanted to ask, I'm a little bit familiar with some of the work that's happening out in California around advancements around child exploitation within migrant or agricultural work. Obviously, children, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm asking, 12, even around that age are able to go into the fields and work. So I was just curious in the Mid-Atlantic region, are there any policy or legislative advancements around protecting children who are sent to the fields earlier, or are there maybe some budding ideas around how to legislatively support children who are having to do this to support their families?
It is, and you're right, a lot of them, especially the Guatemalans, they're small frame, and they could be 25 years old and they look maybe like 16. I wish it would be like that. But yes, it does happen. When I go visit farms, I ask, and I see a lot of the young ones that get off from school and they want to work to make the extra money and help the family have the extra money to buy their school supplies, school clothes. So I do see a lot of young ones in their laws to protect them. Legal Aid Bureau has a unit. It's called the Migrant Farm Worker Project, and they have a Spanish and Haitian Creole speakers that go all around the state of Maryland and Delaware. I used to do that. I worked for Legal Aid for many years ago, and it is, you see the young ones. In Western Maryland, you see it in the apple orchard. We see it in the poultry, especially the chicken coops or the chicken catchers. In the poultry plants, there might be one or two that can, because they have maybe a fake ID or something like that, and it's hard to prove that they are, who they are, what age they are, but there are laws to protect the children's, the youth.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I just had a question. My name's Sam Winans. I'm a junior at Towson, or I'm going to my senior year at Towson University. You guys spoke a lot about building power like throughout different states, different communities to actually address these issues. I wanted to ask, what do you guys see as the first steps or the initial steps to actually building that power? Do you see it coming from more of like a position of improving the material conditions in these communities and earning that trust, like you guys said? Or is this something where you need to be approaching this from all angles at the same time and providing education, political education, while improving the material conditions and working on organizing to address these issues?
So, okay. I think it's, you have to come from multiple angles. But one of the failures we've had as a movement, when I say movement, I mean the collective movement, regardless of your justice area, is we relied a lot on being right. It was like, this is the right thing to do. And we were right. It is right. It's morally right. It's just all economically, it makes sense, all of these things. But being right is not enough. You have to have a strategy. The reason we've been outmaneuvered is because they move from a place of strategy. The hardest part when you're a justice worker is you tend to be moved by your heart a lot. And so you'll hear stories and they all move you and they break you and you're like, I have to save this person. I have to save this community. But if we don't move strategically, we're not going to not only save that community or that individual, we're not going to save anyone. And so Mid-Atlantic Justice Coalition, what we're realizing is when it comes to creating systemic change, we have to, when it comes to our programming, selecting communities that if we build those right, then we can help more people faster. But for a moment, we have to slow down strategically select those communities to help so that they then have the know-how and the power to then help others, right? While at the same time, giving folks education that is necessary for them to get, one, angry enough. You have to be angry enough to start to participate, knowledgeable enough to know that there is a way. But if you don't, so once you're angry, if you don't know there's a way, you say, well, what's the point? My vote doesn't count. My showing up at a public comment session doesn't count. All of those things. So you have to educate on then how does our process work, and then put them in with those communities as a learning incubator, right? And so you might not come from Dover, Delaware, or Richmond, Virginia, or Ivy City, DC, or Bowie, Maryland, but you can learn there with them if those are strategic places for us to build. So then you could take that and each one teach one in other communities and use that as the strategy forward. But as a part of that organizing piece, that relationship builds is all built into the mechanism of the power build.
You want me?
Yeah, please. go
Okay,
ahead.
so I probably come at maybe a slightly different place from this, and you and me had this whole conversation. I have to just disclose this, that Sam and Zaria are working on an intern project, and I love having the interns come down. So we talked a great deal, and I said, what did I tell you? You need to vote. You see the voter rolls, you see the registration things, and ultimately the power really is in our hands, but we don't understand the power we have, I don't think. I have thought about this for way too long, but I think it's like a lot of what Kerri said, it's got a lot of prongs, right? So I think education is a piece. In the rural communities, I think they've written that off as sacrifice zones because there's not enough people to change anything. They can be sacrifice zones. As far as we need science, which I also shared some of the intimidation of scientists and pressure put on scientists. People don't think this is real. They've seen the documents. I've shown it to them. It's real. You do real science, that can be very problematic to your career unless you're tenured, okay? Who would think that, right? Who would think that? Believe me, it's out there. So community-driven research is very important to me, community participatory research, because you know why? The interests that are out there are not going to invest in research that is not going to come out favorably, right? And the absence of data is not the absence of pollution. We all know that. So let me give you just a brief example. In Lower Delaware, we have Seaford has an air monitor, and Rehoboth Beach has an air monitor. No chicken houses or processing plants in Rehoboth Beach, so that was a unique place to put an air monitor, right? We need the monitors where the pollution is if we really want to gauge and get a sense. So it's a lot of things, and I think ultimately, I'm struggling with this myself. I loved the Reverend at lunchtime today. Okay, I like that he got arrested under Bush. I like that he got arrested under Obama, right? I like that. And guess what? Parties are great, but you know what? It's all about us. It's we the people. And we need to hold folks accountable. Every agency, every politician, right? We expect them to represent us. So that's really important. I know this gentleman has a question, and I'm sorry for the long answer, but this is something I've given a lot of thought to. So it's so multi-pronged. And in a shameless plug, I'm going to invite you, and I hope your research is ready by then. And this one's going to be, we're going to be there September 17th, we'll be in Milton, Delaware. And this is one of the things that I'm going to address with breakout sessions and all this, because I think a lot of people, it can get in depth, right? So I think those kind of discussions are good, but that's for later. I'm sorry. I know you've been waiting.
No, I wanted to hear. And I still want to hear. First, thank you all.
Mhm.
Second, I don't think you're all the same people that are on my list, so I can't get back to you. So I would like you to rectify that at the end and your names and contact information. And third, and I'm not doing it now, but I organized an injured workers union in Louisiana and Mississippi for about 10 years.
Nice.
And we organized 2 of the 5 chapters around doctors' offices.
Mm.
The chicken factory town was near Jackson, Mississippi. And they were referring all the women, it was all women, with carpal tunnel syndrome to a psychiatrist so that they could be found not to be covered by the worker comp claim.
Yep.
And then they were, he said, well, your wrist is not bad. We'll send you back to work. And on light duty, and for light duty, they locked them in a room watching a safety film until they quit from boredom. Right. We had another chapter in Lafayette, Louisiana, that was almost all chemically injured people, because the doctor, again, we had a doctor who would refer people to us. So and then we had we actually organized a union in a shipyard, not because the doctor referred us people to him, but because he was so bad. His actual name was Dr. Maybe. So nobody ever got compensated because he never would say that it was a workplace injury. I'm just saying the idea of a health center might be a way to go. Find somebody who's in the health center and see if they like the doctor. Because if they like the doctor can't tell people to go because of HIPAA, but the doctors can't get around that.
So this is interesting, and I'm glad you brought this up, because this brought it, like, this is kind of, but you're in the weeds, so I'm in the weeds too. During COVID, this is interesting, in Delaware, we have couple processing plants. One is union, same integrator. You probably know who I'm talking about. One's non-union, same integrator. During COVID, they literally busted up.
The union plan.
Yep. You know how they did it?
They said they weren't essential, so they could go home.
No. So what they did was they gave out a bunch of little tech trinkets, okay? And they told the workers that if they didn't have a union, that they would be getting paid more money per hour. And we rallied outside of there. You were there. I was there. We all rallied outside of there. And they ended up doing it. The other thing that's going on, and they have temporary services. Literally, I know people, and you know what I'm going to say. I know people that have been working in the processing plants I know one that was 17 years as a
white
temp.
van every day.
As a temp, right? Yeah. And then 17 years through a temporary service. Doesn't that seem a little odd that somebody, wouldn't be hired and wouldn't have benefits? Because you know what happened with COVID? When COVID hit, if you're working for a temporary service, guess what you don't have? Benefits. Guess what? When you get sick, and the industry was putting out, they were, paying people 60% or whatever, they could take so many days off. If you're a temp worker, you can't, okay? Because you have no benefit. So this is the ugly side. It's a lot of half truths that are put out there to make them look good. Like right now, we're dealing with this. There's a transparency rule for contract growers so that they have more transparency in their contracts. Workers get it, the contract growers get it, and price fix and consumers get it as well. But right now, literally, there are articles, and I know there's big national news that's going to be releasing articles that have been talking to folks. The trade groups for the industry, the integrators, and we have found this in multiple states, are going to the contract growers or mailing it to them, a letter that tells them how they should be submitting comment and to oppose the transparency rules. When somebody has your paycheck and a contract over your head, really?
No, I'm not just saying that everything you're saying is true. And you talked about the blacklist, and we found that we actually dumpster dove to find the blacklists, and they did exist.
Oh, the healthcare centers. You can find this. They busted. They literally had somebody making the IDs. Remember in Georgetown, they busted them. Yeah, they were making the IDs. But the sad reality is this is pretty much common knowledge to everybody. Okay, everybody, even those in China, and like there have been now. I have not seen this, although it may exist here, but I have seen it in another state in the southern part, where literally the folks, if they did not go to the company doctor, and you were talking about the different doctors, they didn't go to the company doctor, they were not given time. Like if another doctor had issued them, they were not honored with that.
What it's worth, we organized the Injured Workers Union when I found out that we had a right to pick our own doctor. And about 10 people walked out of the rehab center, which was a rehab barn. And that was the birth of the Injured Workers Union.
I would love to stay in contact with you,
Thank you.
because I think there's some valuable information.
I see you jumping up really quickly. I just want to add the idea with the company doctor as a benefit is really just a cover. And a good friend of mine, her brother worked in the poultry industry on the line, and started coming up with these sores on his body. And he was told, go see the doctor, the company doctor. And the company doctor kept saying, it's eczema. And he was like, I don't know. And he kept saying it's eczema, and it kept getting worse, and it was spreading to private parts and everything. Eczema, don't worry, you're fine. Finally, he goes to someone else, and it turned out it was skin cancer. And by the time somebody else diagnosed it, it was too late for anything to be done. And he had maybe 2 months of life left with 3 kids and brothers and sisters and parents, and all because of a lie. So the industry, again, we sacrifice individuals and communities, not just for an industry, because technically the workers are a part of the industry, but for the wealthy few at the very top who benefit from these cover doctors and from having permits that don't really work for the community or are delayed in their reanalysis. And we really need to no longer think that if we don't hear anything, that it's okay. The reason we usually don't hear anything is because of covers like this.
Not to talk to anybody when you get thrown the job.
Yeah.
Getting it out to our coach.
Please.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Viviana Lozano. I work with the organization CASA de Maryland, and I'm a lead organizer in Baltimore. And we work very close with the community, very close. Today was supposed to come in a member with me because she wanted to give a testimony about something happened with her life. She was not be able to come because last night her youngest son, he got a foot injury and she had to be at the hospital with him. But she asked me if I can give a little bit about what happened with her, a testimony that she wants to share today with everybody.
Please.
It is okay?
Yes, please.
Okay, she say, my name is Sandra Lobo. I'm a resident of the neighborhood Brooklyn in South Baltimore. I'm an immigrant 19 years ago I immigrated 19 years ago with my family from El Salvador after 2000 one earthquake. With a lot of hard work, my family opened a restaurant and we bought a house in Brooklyn that we repair. We feel at home in Brooklyn and part of the hardworking and diversity community that lives there. And as a leader of CASA, I'm being able to work with the neighborhood groups to continue creating a better Brooklyn for our children. After surviving a natural disaster, my family unknowingly moved to a place that is a toxic environment disaster. Brooklyn is near at an energy plant where they burn trash from the estate, releasing toxic chemicals into the air. Because of this, Brooklyn has the worst air quality in the state of Maryland, and residents are more likely to develop chronic respiratory illness, according to an article in the Baltimore Sun. My 60-year-old sister and 13-year-old son are victims of this environment neglect. When we arrived in Brooklyn, my sister was a healthy child with no asthma. But over time, she developed asthma and skin problems at the age of 4 years old. My son was born with pulmonary hypertension, staying a month in the hospital after birth, and now continues to live with asthma, need to take care medication daily. Communities like mine that had then endure the consequences of toxic air every day should receive priority for the new investment to improve the environment. These industries factories are dangerous to our community because even 3 years ago, there was an explosion at one of the factories, and we were recommended not to open the windows and doors for 6 hours to prevent these toxic chemicals from entering our homes. Communities like mine need climate justice now. That's what she wants to share today with you, with everybody.
Thank you.
And CASA is the organization that right now, like probably people know or they know, we work with Unite and Empower the immigrant community in fight for the rights. Right now, CASA is working close in the climate justice too. We are working because we see even like if everybody share, immigrant community normally don't come to talk. They just keep it to themselves and don't survive the way they need to survive and then say nothing. But they've been coming in a way to making see what is the problem and what is going on, because they think, okay, I just need to make money for pay my bills. I just need to make money for buy food. I don't have no time to worry about these things. But we see the growing or the community talking about this, talking about the climate, talking about the environment and what is going on and what is happening to the families and to our families. I just want to share this and thank you. It's very good. I'm very happy to be here today and listen all this.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all your
coming.
work.
And that's what I was saying. Many of them would not shake the boat. You know, they will take it until sometimes it's too late for their families or family members. I know about Casa. I know Gustavo Torres, and I know Kimberly Propiak. I worked with her many years ago. And I was talking to Maria here a little bit, and we had workers that work in the poultry industry, and they.
Please go ahead. But yeah.
Hanging the chickens, and he will say he had to sacrifice the chickens. They have to cut the necks. The machine would not do it, so all the blood splash on him or some of the workers. And when they go to the clinic in the corporate group, um, the first thing they did, because all that blood would fall in their eyes and everything, even if they have glasses. So, the first thing they did was drug test.
Sorry.
So every time he complained about the chicken blood falling in his face and his eyes, and you could see all the blood on him, the goggles and everything he wears. And every time he goes for drug tests. He worked there for so many years, and instead of doing something, he had camera on them. He had telephone pictures, everything, beautiful. But he would not give it to anybody. He shared with me. And for more that I tried to get him to bring this out, no, he decided to go back home. Lost his green card after so many years being here. The sacrifice he made just is unbelievable, and he would not do anything about it.
We're a little bit short on time, so I'd like to just invite folks, if you'd like to give a quick, like, 1-minute closing remarks. And let me start with Queen. We haven't forgotten about you. Queen, if you'd like to say anything in closing, any ways that folks here can help in the collaborative's work, in UPAL's work, or anything you'd like to say in closing, please.
Yes, I would just like to say that be aware of how they label our communities. There was a Sorrel study done years ago, so they came up with the term Sorrel communities, which are communities that they deem don't have the wherewithal to fight back or to voice their concerns or to stand up and just push back against any kind of pollutant entities that they're faced with. Sorrel communities, and we must stand up and not be labeled and not be called that, and exercise our right to self-determination, exercise our right to clean air, clean water. If I was there in the room, one of the questions earlier was about how do we engage. So if I was there in the room, I would ask one simple question that would bind us all. Does anybody in the room drink water or plan on drinking water today? And from that, we go into, our infrastructure, lead poisoning, and how the need for all of us to have clean, safe water, drinking water, potable water, and the need to for the infrastructure bill to address that in an equitable manner, replacing all lead service lines that are in all of our older cities and through all of our communities. So just making sure that we unite on what's common to all of us, as we do with MAGIC and in the Mid-Atlantic Environmental Justice Coalition. And to engage with the collaborative, reach out. I'll put my email and phone number in the chat and the website, and just remember what we have in common, and together we can win the fight, so that they can't run to the next state and say, well, we'll get it done here. If we all stand united, we can, have strength against the corporate entities that don't care if they kill us all, because we all have the right to clean air, clean water, soil to plant our food in, and the right to self-determination, the right to live. Let's exercise that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Queen. Anyone else have any? Would anyone else like to make any last remarks?
I'm just going to feed real quick off of what Kerri was saying and what Queen just said. We are all connected, right? When we stand together. So the issue in Southern Delaware, one of the biggest economic drivers is obviously the poultry industry. But guess what? The north end of the state, we have the refineries, which is other industrial. In some of the other states we're working with, we have concrete. But you know what it all is? It's air pollution. It's water pollution. It's our children's health, right? It is a power imbalance. So this is the value of regional and of understanding that we're all connected. Like, we all need clean air. We all need clean water, right? So when we stand together We take issues that are sometimes often quiet areas that they think aren't going to garner that much attention because not enough. And when we stand together, we build power. And it's going to take building power to create the communities that we want to raise our families in. And we want to sustain this planet, because that really impacted me today with the Reverend, but that's so true. You know, we're fighting for literally our planet, our sustainability.
Yes.
And I'll just quickly say, let's not keep having meetings to meet. Let's not bore ourselves with more Zoom meetings or in-person meetings to talk about how bad things are, but let's make sure that we are actively moving to a place of change, and definitely be guided by our morals, but move with strategic steps. So again, we can create sustainable change.
Thank you, Kerri. And I think that will close us out. Thank you, everyone, for joining this roundtable, joining this panel. And yeah, I don't know what the next session is. I think it's closing remarks, I believe, here.
I think,
Yeah.
there's a panel.
Thank you.
Everyone.